Hey there, my name's Khaled Ghunim, and this is Rooted in Love, a podcast where we dive deep into conversations with spiritual and social justice servant leaders who are dedicated to cultivate a world truly rooted in love. Join us as we intertwine powerful insights and visionary ideas that inspire us to reimagine what it would look like to truly be in radical, loving community together. This episode was filmed during a talk given at Bhakti SF, a wonderful center that provides spiritual community for seekers on the yoga path in San Francisco, and that I've been blessed to be a part of for the past 2.5 years. Thank you for joining us to expand your mind and open your heart towards our collective liberation. This is Rooted in Love. So Shyam, I'm very excited to speak with. Shyam has been such an inspiration, really, for both on his own spiritual journey of really committing to Bhakti as his spiritual path, but then also learning about his own work in trying to create a compassionate world, both in the environmental space, animal justice, and more that we'll talk more about as well and unpack together. So if we go ahead and begin, Shyam, would you like to give a little bit about your own background and how you entered into Bhakti, and also what is Bhakti Yoga for those who are new here too?
Sure. When I was younger, I was as President said, I was a punk rocker, all these things. You hear these lyrics of fighting back, resistance, and all this type of stuff. And when you're younger, it's cool. You have this concept of F this and F that, and all this stuff. When you get older, you start really thinking about well, what does that actually mean? What am I actually mad at, and what am I actually against, and all this type of stuff, and what does the world actually look like? It's hard, it's easy to say you're against something when you're in this small suburb, and it's what do you you don't really know anything outside of the greater landscape of the world and stuff like that. So as you get older and you broaden your horizons of and you travel and all these type of things, and you start seeing things differently, and you can start asking these questions.
What was it that made that switch for you as you got older?
I got sober.
That'll do it.
Yeah. So again, when you're younger, you don't really care about things. You just kind of live just recklessly and all this type of stuff, And I got sober, and you start started seeing the world through your eyes unclouded and unjaded and all these type of things. My ex-wife too had a lot to do with this too, because she's from Guatemala originally. I read this book one time. It's crazy too, because she told me she read this in 5th grade, which is insane to me. But it's this book called I Rigoberta Menchú. It's from her eyes, but it's a collection of different stories that have been told to her during the Guatemalan Civil War and the atrocities that happened there and stuff like that. And so that was whoa, that wasn't that long ago. It was from 69 to 99. So it wasn't really that long ago, and so I started thinking, it was wow, I gotta really learn more about these type of things, and these coups and all this type of stuff. So that's kind of kicked off some of the stuff. We got sober at the same time and all this stuff too. So she founded her nonprofit that she still runs to this day. It's her job and everything. It's her career. She saw Vice TV or something. It was on YouTube. It was a quick little thing. I think it was Vice did it. It was a 5-second thing about these punks in Jakarta in Indonesia that fed the homeless people in their neighborhood. And at the time, we lived in West Oakland in the Bottoms. It's everywhere around you is just people experiencing homelessness and RVs and all this stuff. So we were oh, we could do that. And all this stuff. So yeah, we started doing that, and then she took it from there and just ran with it. And like I said, now it's a 501c3 nonprofit. They have their own workspace, all this stuff, their own office and stuff like that. So yeah, so that's the little things like that. Becoming vegan, did that too. I had a conversation with an old friend from high school who was very devout, vegan, would lay down in front of trucks, things that type of protest, you know what I mean? Yeah. And he would disrupt grocery stores, things like that. And because I remember at the time I was vegetarian. I'm telling him exactly what I'm telling you right now, where it's oh yeah, I'm starting to really think about what is, what am I truly against and things like that, And I was like, oh yeah, I'm vegetarian too. And he was like, that's cool, man. He was like, you should, you should check out like some other stuff, you know, like, he told me about the movie Earthlings.
Oh dear.
Have you ever seen that?
No, but I can imagine.
Yeah, it's
tough.
It's pretty heavy. I was working at this bar. I used to do security there, and I just watched the video. I found it on YouTube. It was like an hour and a half long, and it's just like footage of it's broken down in all different like things like entertainment, clothing, pets, and the food industry and stuff. So it was like that, and it's just like the footage on top of like a narrator like saying like and it's just like yeah. So that's like another thing where it's one of those things where it's like you get angry when you see these type of things, and then you're like, okay, now I'm ready to combat this, you know, and all this type of stuff. And
well, I commend you because I feel like a lot of people can watch it, but then they're like, oh, but I love meat, and they just continue, you know?
Yeah,
but it actually switched something inside of your heart that you actually went for.
Yeah, and that's like the argument of like, you know, like I always mess with my mom, you know, and I'm always like, you should go vegan or at least vegetarian, you know. She goes, well, I can't do that. And I'm like, no, you can. You can physically do it. It's not going to hurt you, you know. It's actually going to be beneficial for you, you know. But, you know, people don't want to hear that. That's the world we live in, is Maya and all this stuff. We'll get into that in a little bit, but, you know. But, yeah, so it's a combination of all that stuff. The political rise of you know, the alt-right, the far-right politics, things like that, you know, and this is just, by the way, everything I say about my beliefs, these are mine. This is just what I believe, and this is what me and Colette believe. We're not shaming or talking down about anybody else if they have differing views of me and stuff like that. I just want to throw that out there. But yeah, so that's when we, like, me and like my crew, people we were hanging out with, we started changing to like be more like, more active, doing more direct action and stuff like that. There's a lot more protests, like in Berkeley and things like that. And I became a father, and that's when I started thinking about all the things like that I was mentioning, like that I'm against and all this, you know, and all this. But then I started looking at it in the lens of more compassion, because it's like, well, I have a child, like I can't raise them to hate other things, you know, even if it's like, I believe that it's self-defense and, you know, these type of things. And I believe what I'm doing is right, you know, and all this type of stuff. You know, we have to meet people where they're at, you know, regardless of what they believe and all this type of stuff, as long as, you know, we can come to a common understanding of each other. And I wanted to teach my daughter that, you know, but also teach her my, you know, morals of, you know, not, you know, we don't hate anybody for, well, we tell my daughter, don't make fun or don't hate anybody for something they can't change in 5 seconds or something. It's me and my ex-wife say to her, where it's like, you know, you can like, you know, if they have a booger hanging out of their nose, they can fix that in 5 seconds. But if like their skin color, things like that, they can't change that type of thing. So what's the point of, you know, hating on that? It doesn't, we're all people, you know, it's all this type of thing. I started having this like, not dilemma, but like this like idea of like, oh, okay, well, like, who am I? Like all these type of things. I said, like, I started thinking of things like, like try to change my train of thought of like, of these things that I believe in and all this type of stuff. And then that's when my friend gave me a Bhagavad Gita, and I always knew about Krishna consciousness and the Hare Krishna movement, or, you know, for lack of a better term, because you know, being part of the ingrained in the history of hardcore and all this type of stuff. And
sorry, can I ask, like, did you have any spiritual background before that? Did you grow up with any?
My parents, like, so when I was not to go too deep into me, but when I was a freshman in high school, my house burned down. And my parents, like, my dad was always kind of dabbled in Buddhism, but I think after that, like, he really like wanted to like dive deep into it to like figure out. I think he did it as like a coping mechanism to deal with losing all of his possessions and all this type of stuff, you know, and like finding that inner peace with himself. So we used to go to this monastery in Lafayette, but that was like, I was like 14 or 15, and like I went there a few times, and it was cool. I didn't like walk away from it like, oh, this is, you know, this isn't cool or anything. I thought it was cool. I just, you know, like I said, when I was young, I just was reckless. I didn't care about anything, you know. So then I started reading the Bhagavad Gita and all this stuff, and then one thing led to another, and I met Ananta and everybody, and now I'm here talking to you about political activism in front of strangers.
How long ago was that too?
It was actually perfect timing for me because it was like 2019 when I first started kind of getting interested, because my daughter was born in 2019, okay. And then 2020 is like the pandemic happened, so I was just at home with nothing to do, just to read and to read and research and all this type of stuff.
Immerse yourself. Okay, that's incredible. And yeah, what a timing to be able to actually really dive in and have the time to dive in.
Sure.
Yeah, so I guess before we go into like more depth around the social justice piece, if you'd be able to share a bit about what Bhakti Yoga is and what called you to this path specifically.
Bhakti means devotion. This book, the Bhagavad Gita, it was teaching love, compassion, acceptance, but it was also teaching you that it's like you can't give up your fight, right? So that's the conflict in the book is Arjuna not wanting to follow through with his fight on the battlefield and all this stuff. And Krishna goes, well, you have to. This is your duty. This is your dharmic duty, right? And it's for the liberation, of the souls of the demonic, family and all this stuff. So that's where it started it really resonated with me because it was like combating injustices doesn't have to be like sitting down and just letter writing and all this type of stuff, because it doesn't, from my experience, that doesn't work, and stuff like that. So that's what grabbed me to it. And then it was like the idea of non-meat eating, all these type of things. I was straight edge and all this stuff, so like this idea of like no intoxication and all this type of stuff. And from my experience, that is not happiness. Like you think it is at the time, like when you're getting high or drunk or whatever, you think like, oh, like this is how what could be any better than this? And then it's like it's not. It's horrible. Like all these type of things. So yeah. So when you exactly, and that's so when you read this concept of this compassionate God who's telling you that like this isn't like this is not the way, like this is the true way of happiness, and breaks it down in like a way that's tangible for me at least. Like that's where I was like, all right, I'm gonna learn more about that. I gotta check this out a little more, and all this stuff. And that's kind of what drove me to it,
Wow.
Yeah. What about you?
Yes.
No, I'm curious about how you got into Bhakti through, like, how does it?
Yes. So I started through just like being interested in meditation in general. I studied psychology in college, and I was very interested in like what is consciousness, what is the body, what is the mind, and I felt like through meditation I was able to start to realize that there is a difference between whatever the soul is versus the mind and the body. And so there was a club on campus, and somebody was like, oh, do you want to join a mantra meditation
group? What school were you?
At Northwestern in Chicago. I'm from Chicago. And it was the Bhakti Club on campus, which I didn't know. And so that was how I got introduced to the world of Bhakti, and that they were having amazing discussions, philosophical discussions for hours on end every Friday night with kirtan and prasadam, which is like the dinner feast. And it was incredible. And so that was like my first foray into it. And then I studied abroad and totally lost contact with that path. And then I came back to it after going through my own dark night of the soul, my own divorce 2.5 years ago, and also seeking questions about like, what is my purpose here? What is the meaning of life? And it was really my spiritual awakening to come back into the path, and Bhakti was the first one that I wanted to return to. Yeah.
One thing that really resonated with me in the beginning is the teachings of Srila Prabhupada, where
who is Srila Prabhupada?
Srila Prabhupada is the founder of ISKCON, the International Society of Krishna Consciousness. He's our founder Acharya. He's the reason we're all sitting here right now. He's the reason I'm sitting here right now. He's the reason I'm probably like still alive. But he's the one who brought Krishna consciousness to the West. He was against, the caste system, and he was for women being, gurus, things like that. Like these type of concepts that were like unheard of in India at the time, and all this stuff, and even in in the Western world too, you know, especially back then in the 60s, you know, like it wasn't as equal as it is now. It's still not even really that equal, but you know, it's less than it was, you know? Yeah. So, so that's one thing I wanted to throw that out there too, because that is a big integral part of like at least my story, especially if you look at time and place and circumstance and stuff like that of his era and his generation. Like he's very progressive for, you know, like I said, for that time period. And that's something that really resonated with me too, was, you know, because at the time, from what I saw from religion and stuff like that, was like very, you know, just the bad side of things. And so it was nice to see somebody who was this religious figure who was very compassionate and like, you know, not saying all religious figures are like that, but I'm just saying that like it was nice to see somebody that was tangible, that was like, it felt like he was presented to me to like, for like my journey. Like that's how God, because I believe that God, like he manifests himself in different ways at different times, at different eras and all this stuff throughout, is like everything is him, right? So he's always been constant, right? But and I think that's how he manifested himself to me, for me to follow this path. So
yeah, I totally believe that I think that like, right, the idea that there's like multiple passports to the same destination, and that, you know, whichever one resonates with our nature.
Because that's all we want, is to go back to God, you know, and all this stuff, and the idea is to be kind to people, to be loving and compassionate, and go back to him eventually, you know, and serve Krishna and stuff.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, and I guess this leads into the next question, which is like this idea of the ultimate purpose. What is the sole purpose of us being here? And it's this idea of like awakening our true nature and returning to the divine, to Krishna, and this path is considered God. And
Krishna is God.
Krishna is God, yes. And with that ultimate purpose being that return to Godhead and remembering our true nature of being an eternal soul, what is the relation of spirituality to ending the very real suffering that we're seeing literally outside our doorstep?
Easy way to answer that is like, oh, well, if we just awaken our God consciousness, and we like the four regular principles that I mentioned earlier, where I mentioned a couple of them, and you know, is, you know what they are: no meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, and no gambling, right? All these type of things. Like, if everybody followed those principles, then, you know, like some of the people outside wouldn't be there, because they wouldn't be relying on intoxication and things like that. I'm not negating anybody that's outside right there. As somebody who's dealt with addiction and things like that, I would never, you know, think I'm better than anybody out there too. I always joke that I'm like one non-paycheck away from being them. So, you know, like, so I just wanted to throw that out there. But that's the idea, is that it's like, you know, if people like, if we could keep conveying this message of like love and compassion, and if you know, we're building our karma, right? Our karmic, you know, and so the idea is that if we do right by one another, and we look at each other from a community, instead of this like a dog eat dog, like competition, land of competition, right? Like, then we wouldn't have a lot of the problems that we have, right? So that's the idea, right? But that's not the world we live in. That's not the age we live in. We live in the age of Kali, in the age of quarrel, right? It's from the demonic forces. It's the karma of man, basically, you know. And so the idea is, when we portray these messages of like I said, of compassion and you know, and kindness to all, like animals and people like that aren't, you know, people outside, things like that, right? Then if we keep pushing these type of things, then hopefully the world will latch on to it, right? And we can break ourselves from this, like, from this idea of thing. But that's the thing, is that we're always going to be in this battle, because we're always like, we're stuck in this age of Maya, right? So that's the idea, is that if we continue to keep, you know, we do book distribution, as you know, we do prasadam, we hand out the food to people experiencing homelessness in the neighborhood, things like that. That's just us, you know, like Prabhupada, like when he came here, they started the Food for Life. Like, he was like, the first thing he did when he got to New York was he came to the Lower East Side, right? Like, that's the Lower East Side of New York was not what it is now. It's not some hipster, fun, $20 cup of coffee area. That was a really gnarly neighborhood. That was a whole area. I mean, most of New York was like that back in the, but the Lower East Side was dangerous. Yeah, and he was like, no, this is where I need to be. Like, why would I teach, this to like affluent, rich people that aren't going to listen to me anyway, and he's like, I want to be with the people, and these are the people, and stuff like that. And that's how he started that, he said, they eventually started feeding people. That's how, not to go off on another tangent, but that's how like it got involved in hardcore and punk music, is from him feeding people in Tompkins Square Park in New York, which they still do to this day. The idea of Bhakti as we know it is like, that's what it's built on, is that it's built on this idea of like compassion and being against the caste and uplifting people that are low, I don't know just how to say it politely, just like, suffering, exactly, thank you, and so if we help and we look out for each other, then that will raise people, we can get people out of that, and help other people and stuff like that. So that's what I was gonna say. It's the constant struggle. That fight's gonna be happening as long after a few more lifetimes from us. It's still gonna be happening. So that's why it's really important for us to keep going out there and giving out the literature, giving out food, giving out these things, because it shows that we can live in this world and be harmonious and happy and like all, without like the need to like have all these unnecessary like possessions and this unnecessary like excess of things. We don't really need these things. It's like, I have my phone and stuff like that, but and I don't. But we're in the system or the society where we need these things, so that's one thing. But like, I don't need multiple of these, or I don't need the newest one. I don't need these type of, I don't need certain, and that's really inherent to me with Bhakti too, is that it's like, it's the idea that we can live harmoniously together. That's the idea of, is that we can all live together and care for one another.
Which feels super revolutionary right now, to be honest, because it feels like, especially right now in the US, where there is this sense of like hyper-isolation, polarity that's happening, that what I really love about the path of Bhakti is that it does feel very revolutionary in creating such intentional community and like very tight-knit relations to be able to support one another. And something else that I feel like also around what's happening in the world around like food production and just like the health and wellness, that it's so beautiful that in the kitchen that everything is being made from scratch, and that like we're trying to use things that are nourishing for our bodies and also to be able to offer to God. And so it feels very different from what we're seeing out in the day-to-day world too.
Absolutely, and that's the thing too, is that it's like, I remember one time somebody was like, they were like, how are you vegan? It's so expensive to be vegan. I was like, no, it's not. Like, I mostly eat a lot of beans and rice. Like, that's really cheap and easy to make and all these type of things. Like, like you can do these things, you can live a sustainable life. Like, you don't need to. And it's important, like, for us to eat well and do these type of things, because we need to have strength and all this type of stuff so we can continue service, our service and serving Krishna and all these type of,
Totally. There's also something that I have been thinking about deeply, is like another thing that I think many of us have started to realize in this awakening that's happening after the pandemic, and then of course with everything happening now, that there is this disconnect that has occurred, that we think that the mind, the body, the spirit is all different, and that a lot of us have been indoctrinated in a way to let go of spirit and only focus on the secular material world. Sure. And wondering, like, with us diving into a spiritual path, how does that allow us to show up better in the material world? Or, to be of service in a way.
Well, it's important to take, like I said, it's important to take care of your body and things like that, and your mind, as we know it, is what we perceive and stuff like that, because we believe in reincarnation, we believe in next lives and stuff like that. So it's like, yes, we'll be in a different body, and in a whole different, who knows where we're going to end up, right? It all matters on our karma, and so when we build this and we do things like we were mentioning earlier about, service to Krishna, service to other people, one another, look out for each other and all this type of stuff, we're building good karma, and that's what's going to carry us on to their next life with a good, higher and all this type of stuff, and to the point where, like we said earlier, we break the samsara, the cycle of birth and death and old age and disease, and we go back to Godhead, right? So you can't have one without the other. Like, yes, the body is really nothing, right? Because at the end of the day, like, when we leave this body, we'll go on to another one, right? Or we'll break the thing, but I know I'm not, so not this time, not this lifetime,
You never know.
Yeah, true, like touche, but yeah. So it's important. So to me, it's important to take care of one so you can take care of the other, right? Mm-hmm. So you take care of your soul, so that way your repeated birth and death can be better and better, or so you can get to a point where you can break it, right? And in order for you to maintain, a strong will to keep, serving and nourishing your soul and stuff like that is by taking good care of your body. What affects your mind affects your body, right? So that's why, like, if you're so stressed, that's why people have strokes and heart attacks and things like that. Like, they could be super active, type people. So it's all those things are intertwined as far as I'm concerned, right? This is my belief that all those things are combined and intertwined with each other. And so if you help one, you're helping the other. And I think it's important that, I think, I don't know if that really answers your question, but that's kind of like.
I mean, I think because I'm very much in like the activism organizing space. I'm Palestinian and Mexican, so like the things that are happening are very much affecting, right, on both sides of my family members. And so it is very close to my heart. And I think a lot about like a lot of people who are in the activism space are totally burnt out and exhausted, and they're just like in full go mode. And it's also anyone who's working, anyone who's out in this, like, really the colonization that has happened has made us so fast paced that, again, it feels almost revolutionary what Bhakti does to allow us to slow down and to go into our inner worlds and to go into stillness and to be able to take care of our bodies and nourish our bodies in that way of like being vegetarian and eating whole foods and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, it feels like what you're saying relates to that for sure.
It's important to always remember that we're at the end of the day we're serving Krishna. We were talking about this earlier, right? So like everything is Krishna, right? Krishna, we believe that everything is Krishna because everything is God, right? Everything is Him. So I believe that by fighting back against things that we deem are wrong, right? We are serving Krishna because He's one and the same of His devotees, His disciples. He's everything, right? So when we protect the planet, all these type of things, like we're serving Krishna because we're protecting Him and while He protects us. There's a disconnect there where it's if you are too politically motivated, then you're not serving Krishna. A lot of anarchists and stuff like that and communists that I've known over the years, they're, atheists and all this type of stuff. Communism is an atheist and all this type of stuff. So, it seems anti-religious to be like politically motivated. As far as like the left side goes. I know a lot of the extreme right, they tout themselves as Christians, but I think they misinterpreted it all. But that's a different topic for another time. I think that. But I think if you look at it through the lens of Bhakti, and I mean really any religion, but I think for me personally it's Bhakti because that's what I follow and all this stuff, is that you are like serving Krishna. You're still like that connection is still there, right? Because like everything you do in this world has to be in service of Krishna. Like everything you do, your job, your family life, your home life, and all this type of stuff. And we all have our dedicated path that we have to go on. That's our dharma, right? That's the whole point of this whole conversation, right? Is the dharma, right? And so it's important that when we are, again, not to be, like combative, and things like not to use blunt words like that, but the idea of it, where it's like, it's still in service of Krishna, because it's the idea that we are protecting everybody, like we're protecting his disciples, like his devotees, and he's not different from us. His name is not different from him. So when we chant these names and we're spreading this consciousness to people, in my opinion, that is the best form of reaction, like of protest. Is like we're giving you this like salvation to like to break yourself from this like thing. And I know that brings up the I know it's a very like ego, like it can be a very ego thing where it's like, wow, I'm not trying to
spiritual ego.
Well, I also like never wanted to like somebody who's really suffering in this world, like not in the Western world. You know what I mean? It's like I don't want to be like, well, if you just hear Bhagavad Gita and you just read this, everything will be fine. You know what I mean? Like, but it's you have to look at it in the bigger landscape of things, where it's like you really have to have the key word in all of this is faith. You have to have faith. You have to really like. When you like, because you want to break, like you have to understand that there are other births. Like this one may be horrible for you, not you, but the royal you. You know what I mean? This hypothetical you that I'm talking to. But if we do right and we do these things, then we can break ourselves in our next lifetime and things like. And I know that's really like, it sounds really like kind of messed up to say to somebody, but it's true. Like. We have to think like this current world, this current like idea, this current like conversation we're having, this current everything that we're having is like not even like, you can't even comprehend the small amount of time it really is in the idea of the grand scheme of like time and stuff like that, and not to go too crazy with that, but you know what I mean, like where it's like this will be over like
very, very soon.
Yeah. And it doesn't feel like it, and it's never going to feel like it, because we're conditioned to believe that this is the only time that the world is ever going to be, but it's not. The world's been around for a long time. It's going to be around for a lot longer, So I believe that if we just, as far as like, and it's sad. It's sad to see these like atrocities happening and stuff like that. But to me, that's like the perfect idea, or not the perfect, but that's like the perfect example of Maya and stuff like that. Like demonic forces that truly exist. When you see all this suffering that the people have to go through and stuff like that. And so, how we combat that, as far as bhakti goes, is by spreading Krishna consciousness and telling people that it's like, I know right now it's not. You don't think it is, but it's going to be better. Maybe not right now, maybe not in this lifetime, but I promise you, if you keep him in your heart, we will get past this and we'll move on, So.
Yeah, and it's like if we can do that purification process for each individual person through the power of sharing this transcendental knowledge, that it's the long-term change of exactly. Making a better world.
And it's like, it's awakening God consciousness too. It's not like, again, it's what works for people, but this is what's worked for me, and I've seen it like with my own eyes, like examples in my life of like that this is all real and this is true and this isn't, I'm not just putting blind faith into something like that, and because I that's one thing that like I with my early years of punk and all this stuff, where it's like you gotta question everything, you question all these type of things, and we don't just blind faith into things. I don't preach a closed-minded conception of God or conception of life, or I don't like to preach a blind faith of like this type of things. It's just like I try to preach an idea of looking at life differently, where it's like people aren't just flesh of just like sense gratification, and people and animals aren't just flesh just to satisfy our tongues and all these type of things. Like everything is a living soul. Everything has a soul inside of it. Everything does. The blades of grass, all this type of stuff. So if we treat them compassionately and work on that, then we can at least make a difference. We're not going to get through it, but we can at least make a difference.
Totally. And that, like, if it's like a one by one, each time that person switches over to realize those truths, that it can really transform their family, then it transforms their community by, like, I'm sure, like, even for myself, as I've gone deeper in the path, that it's starting to, ripple out to my network of people. So it's really real.
It's knowing how to like explain these concepts without sounding like you're in a cult.
Yes.
No, this is this is the truth. Like this is what I believe is the truth and stuff like that.
It feels like we are so ingrained in Maya, in this material illusionary energy, that it can feel very hard to be pulled back out of it. And I think another thing that's really important within Bhakti is that it is this place where we are able to remember the truth of who we are, our true nature. And so because we are zoomed out, that's how we can actually be of service to the world, is not by being in the burning flames with everyone else too. That the more that we elevate our consciousness, then we can actually support people even more. And I'm wondering if you have any reflection.
No, you said it perfectly.
Yeah, of like the elevating of consciousness. This has been really, really good. I feel like we answered like the key points. I'm wondering if I know that there was a few verses that you did want to bring up from the Bhagavad Gita that felt relevant to go to scripture as well.
Bhagavad Gita 4 and 7. This is like a summary of 4 and 7, chapter 4, verse 7 and 8. Whenever there's a decline in Dharma and a rise of Adharma, I manifest myself to protect the righteous, destroy the wicked, and reestablish Dharma. This is basically saying that Krishna himself shows upholding justice as divine duty. Bhagavad Gita 3:2-1, which is chapter 3, verse 21. Whatever action a great person performs, common people follow. Leaders must act dharmically to ensure justice spreads through society. These are just summaries of this is just what it seemed, what it meant to me, right? Type thing, I'm not pulling this from like Prabhupada's purports or anything, And then one other one is the Bhagavad Gita 5:18, which is the humble sages sees with equal vision a learned Brahmin, a gentle Brahma, and a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater. The true vision of Dharma is equality of all beings. So we don't see ourselves any higher and lower than everything else.
Yeah, and I guess it's like, again, being able to go to that level of consciousness of like being able to zoom out to see us all as the same, sharing the same spirit, soul,
absolutely.
Jiva.
Because we are all part and parcel of Krishna. So when you offend or disrespect, so you're disrespecting Krishna. That's how I look at it, right? So.
Yes, because Krishna is inside of each person.
And like I said earlier, like I don't think I'm any better or any worse than anybody else. I think we're all equally stuck in this age of Maya, which just, I just like to try to like push forward an idea of like compassion.
Thank you. And thank you all for taking the time, really, for you to be able to, go deeper into your own spiritual journey. It is truly the most important thing that we could be doing in this current age. So I just wanted to commend you all for being here too, to do that work. It's the most important work we could be doing. So thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Rooted in Love, featuring Shyam Das, an inspiring soul that has pursued their own spiritual path so fully. If you'd like to learn more about Shyam's journey and his music, you can find a list of useful links in the show notes. Feel free to share this episode with a friend, subscribe, and leave a rating. Follow along for future episodes on Instagram at cocos.sanctuary, which is also in the show notes. Until next time, please be sure to take intentional moments of pause to be able to stay rooted in love within yourselves and for the community around you.